Imagine finding yourself in a place where every law of nature seems to have been bent. Here, the dinosaurs that once ruled the planet have shrunk into timid, miniature creatures hiding among dense forests. Meanwhile, those that merely glided through the skies, the pterosaurs, have become colossal beasts, their wings spanning more than 10 meters, capable of snatching baby dinosaurs in a single bite. This isn't science fiction. That paradox truly existed. On Hatzeg, a real island that once lay in the ancient Tethys Ocean, where evolution wrote one of the strangest chapters in Earth's history. A world cut off for millions of years, where life experimented freely, and sometimes stepped beyond the limits nature once set. About 70 million years ago, at the end of the Cretaceous period, Earth looked nothing like it does today. Europe was not a single continent, but a labyrinth of hundreds of islands scattered across the vast Tethys Sea. An ancient ocean stretching from North Africa all the way to Central Asia. As the great supercontinent Gondwana broke apart, global sea levels rose dramatically, over 200 meters higher than today. Much of what is now France, Germany, and Romania lay beneath the waves, with only mountain ranges and plateaus rising above the water to form a chain of tropical islands. The climate was warm and humid. Lush forests of ferns and conifers spread across the land, interwoven with mangrove swamps and winding rivers. In this fragmented world, European dinosaurs had to adapt to an entirely new environment. On each island, they were cut off from their mainland relatives, unable to migrate across the sea. That isolation sparked a grand evolutionary experiment, where species evolved along their own unique, often counterintuitive path. And at the heart of that island chain, floating in the middle of the Tethys, lay Hatzeg Island, a place that would become one of paleontology's greatest enigmas. According to modern geological research, Hatzeg covered an area of roughly 80,000 to 200,000 square kilometers, comparable in size to today's Madagascar. Its terrain was far from flat. Mountains in the north, dense forests in the south, and wetlands and river deltas along the coastlines. Warm ocean currents from the south carried moisture, giving Hatzeg a tropical monsoon climate. Long rainy seasons followed by harsh dry ones. Sediments on the island contain fossils of tropical plants such as ferns, cycads, and ancient palms, showing that vegetation was abundant and diverse. Yet the island's geology also reveals a harsher truth. Resources were scarce. The land was limited, food was precious, and there was no escape to the world beyond. It was the perfect setting for the laws of evolution to twist. The giant species began to shrink, an adaptation to conserve energy. Meanwhile, others, especially those that could fly or move swiftly, grew larger, filling the ecological gaps left behind. In the surrounding seas, coral reefs and lagoons teemed with fish, marine reptiles, and invertebrates, forming the foundation of the island's food web. In other words, Hatzeg was a miniature planet, isolated, self-contained, and delicately balanced. Nowhere else on Earth at that time showed more clearly how isolation could reshape evolution. Inside this natural laboratory, over millions of years, life sculpted some of the strangest creatures ever known to science. And we are about to meet them. The dwarfed dinosaurs, the stout island predators, and the gigantic flying reptiles that could swallow a baby dinosaur whole. On Hatzeg Island, the familiar rules of nature began to crumble. Creatures that were once giants elsewhere, towering like buildings and weighing tens of tons, here stood no taller than a human. It wasn't because they were young. Evolution had forced them to become smaller in order to survive. This phenomenon is known as insular dwarfism, island dwarf evolution. It occurs when a large species becomes isolated on an island where resources are limited, space is tight, and there are few or no natural predators. Over time, smaller individuals, those that require less food and reproduce faster, are more likely to survive and pass on their genes. After hundreds of thousands of generations, they become a permanently miniaturized version of their ancestors. Hatzeg is the most striking example of this phenomenon in the entire Cretaceous period. Fossils discovered in the Hatzeg Basin have revealed a whole host of miniature dinosaurs compared to their mainland relatives. Magorosaurus dacus, a relative of the giant titanosaurs such as Argentinosaurus, measured only about 6 meters long and weighed less than a ton. On the mainland, their kin could grow up to 25 meters long and weigh 30 tons. Telmatosaurus transylvanicus, a hadrosaur, duck-billed dinosaur, from Hatzeg, was just 5 meters long, barely 1/3 the size of its North American cousins. Zalmoxes robustus and Zalmoxes schipperorum, members of the Iguanodontia family, stood only slightly taller than an adult human and weighed around 100 to 150 kilograms, about as much as a wild boar. At first, paleontologists suspected these fossils might belong to juvenile individuals. But when they sliced the bone samples thin and examined them under a microscope, the opposite was revealed. The bone tissue was dense, the growth rings had stopped. Signs of full maturity. In other words, these were fully grown adults, genuinely dwarfed by evolution. Why was this miniaturization so widespread? The answer lies in energy. Giant dinosaurs required a giant supply of food, but on an island like Hatzeg, only a few 100,000 square kilometers in size, the ecosystem simply couldn't support such massive appetites. Under these constraints, smaller individuals had a better chance of survival. Not because they were stronger, but because they needed less to live. Over millions of years, evolution favored them, producing island versions of once mighty species. The lack of large predators also played a role in reshaping bodies. On Hatzeg, there were no colossal tyrannosaurs or abelisaurs. The most fearsome hunters were only a few meters long, like Balor Bondok. As a result, the herbivores didn't need great size for defense. Being small made them quicker in the forests, easier to hide and more efficient at conserving energy. Another fascinating point. Researchers found that the brains of Hatzeg's dinosaurs did not shrink in proportion to their bodies, meaning they were relatively more intelligent than their giant relatives. In this isolated world, body size decreased, but adaptability, and perhaps even intelligence, increased. You could say Hatzeg was a compressed version of the dinosaur planet. Everything smaller, yet every ecological role still intact. Except here, the prey that once fled from ground predators now faced a new terror, enormous flying hunters waiting in the skies. And in this world where even giants had to shrink to survive, the predators were no exception. But that didn't mean they were any weaker. On the contrary, the predators of Hatzeg became more muscular, tougher, and more terrifying than ever. The most famous of them was Balor Bondok, nicknamed the stocky raptor of Transylvania. Its Romanian name literally means the robust dragon, and indeed the name describes it perfectly. Balor measured only about 2 meters long and weighed around 25 to 30 kilograms, far smaller than its mainland cousins like Deinonychus or Velociraptor. But what made it unique was its dense bone structure and immensely powerful hind limbs. Studies show that Bala had 2 sickle-shaped claws on each foot, instead of just one, as in typical raptors. Those curved, razor-sharp talons could tear through flesh or pin down a struggling victim within seconds. Its hind limb bones were heavily built, wide hips, short, thick femurs, suggesting it was a close combat ambusher rather than a high-speed chaser like its mainland relatives. In the dense forests of Hatzeg, where visibility was poor, sudden bursts of power mattered far more than speed. Imagine this. Deep within the fern-covered woods of Hatzeg, a young Magyarosaurus grazes quietly. From the brush, Bala explodes into motion, both feet locking around the prey, claws slashing across its throat. Within moments, the tiny giant collapses. In this upside-down world, size no longer determined who ruled. Yet Bala remains one of the most controversial creatures in paleontology. Some researchers examining the shape of its limbs and hands have proposed that Bala might not have been entirely carnivorous. Its teeth were less serrated, its neck shorter, and its forelimbs unusually strong, traits that could suit breaking branches, digging roots, or tearing open tough fruit. This has led to an intriguing hypothesis. Perhaps Bala was omnivorous, or even partially herbivorous. Of course, this remains speculation. No fossil evidence yet confirms it. Still, whether hunter or scavenger, Bala represents the extreme adaptability of island evolution, a hybrid of strength and efficiency, perfectly engineered for Hatzeg's harsh ecosystem. Alongside Bala, the island hosted several smaller predators, less famous, yet vital to maintaining balance. Paleontologists have discovered fossils of Bradycnum and Elopteryx, 2 small theropods under 2 meters long, likely hunters of large insects, reptiles, or dinosaur eggs. Their presence reveals a tiered predatory hierarchy on Hatzeg. Small species preyed on insects and tiny animals. Mid-sized ones, like Bala, targeted juvenile dinosaurs. And above them all, in another realm entirely, soared a far deadlier predator. While the dinosaurs on the ground had shrunk into dwarfs, something in the sky was rising to monstrous proportions. A flying creature with a wingspan over 12 meters, a head the size of a dining table, a neck as thick as a tree trunk, and jaws powerful enough to crush bone. It was the king of Hatzeg, and the nightmare of everything that walked its forests. On this island, where the land was cramped and resources scarce, there seemed to be only one direction left to grow: the sky. And it was there that evolution forged a being so formidable that even seasoned paleontologists shudder when they speak its name. Hatzegopteryx thambema, the winged creature of Hatzeg. A colossal pterosaur, taller than a human, with a wingspan longer than a small airplane, and powerful enough to bring down a dinosaur with a single bite. This giant belonged to the Azhdarchidae family, distant relatives of Quetzalcoatlus from North America. But Hatzegopteryx was different. It didn't just fly, it hunted on land. Its massive skull, nearly 3 meters long, a neck as thick as a human torso, and unusually dense bones, all revealed that this was no delicate glider, but a multi-purpose predator. While most pterosaurs had thin, hollow bones like bamboo tubes, Hatzegopteryx possessed a honeycomb-like internal structure, tiny air chambers reinforced by cross-bracing struts. This design made the bones both lightweight and extraordinarily strong. That combination allowed it to swing its head violently, bite, drag, or even lift prey weighing tens of kilograms without breaking its neck. Standing on the ground, Hatzegopteryx reached 4.5 to 5 meters tall, roughly the height of a young giraffe. With a wingspan of 12 meters, its shadow alone could blanket a patch of forest. Recent studies from the universities of Portsmouth, UK, and Cluj, Romania, show that its neck and wing muscles were proportionally stronger than in any other asteroid, making it not only a superb flyer, but also an agile runner and ground hunter. Picture the scene. On an open clearing at the forest's edge, a young Telmatosaurus grazes on ferns. Silence. From afar, a colossal shadow descends. Wings fold in an instant, the head dips low, and massive jaws clamp around the prey. Moments later, Hatzegopteryx takes off again, leaving behind only swirling dust and silence. Some paleontologists have gone further, suggesting Hatzegopteryx may have been the apex predator of the island, not merely a scavenger. Evidence supporting this idea includes its immense neck strength, blade-like beak, and wear marks on its teeth showing that it bit into large bones. Behavior typical of an active hunter. Of course, no fossil ever preserves a hunt, so absolute proof is impossible. Yet based on morphology, it is highly likely that Hatzegopteryx sat at the top of Hatzeg's food chain. Like an eagle, but 10 times the size. Beyond the king, the skies of Hatzeg also hosted smaller, equally strange inhabitants. A Lanka draco with its long, needle-like beak and aerodynamic crest likely skimmed the island's lagoons for fish. Other fragmentary fossils hint at mid-sized pterosaurs with wingspans of 4 to 6 meters, playing ecological roles similar to modern storks or herons. Together, these flying reptiles turned Hatzeg's skies into a deadly domain. Nowhere was safe. Dwarf dinosaurs were seized from above, small crocodiles were plucked from the water, and even primitive birds hid beneath the canopy to escape those predatory eyes. In a world where the land was limited, only the sky was vast enough for dominance. And on Hatzeg, that dominion belonged to the colossal wings of Hatzegopteryx, a creature that inverted the natural order, turning dinosaurs themselves into its prey. Yet, in a strange twist of balance, as the flying reptiles grew ever larger, the world beneath them became smaller and more fragile. Herbivores retreated deep into the forests to avoid detection, while mid-sized predators like Balar adapted to hunt under cover of night. Hatzeg became a tropical inferno, a closed ecosystem where every creature had to evolve its own survival strategy or vanish. From above, Hatzeg may have looked like a brilliant green jewel floating in the ancient Tethys ocean. But upon landing, one would realize it was no paradise at all, but a natural prison, hot, humid, suffocating, and crawling with predators lurking in the shadows. According to sediment samples and geological data, Hatzeg once had a subtropical climate, much like the rainforests of modern Southeast Asia. Average yearly temperatures hovered around 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. The wet season was long and heavy, while the dry season was short but harsh. Massive storms frequently swept in from the ancient Tethys Sea, drenching the island in rain and thunder that echoed across the valleys. The vegetation was lush but not tall, forests of ferns, cycads, and ancient palms interwoven with low conifers, forming a dense, shadowy jungle. There, the Magyarosaurus, the island's miniature titanosaur, moved slowly through the undergrowth, using its long neck and tiny head to pluck tender leaves. They lived in small herds of 4 to 6 individuals, larger groups would have quickly exhausted the island's limited food supply. Above, Hatzegopteryx circled high, sometimes landing near forest edges to scavenge carcasses. Under the canopy, Balor Bondok prowled like a cat, swift, alert, its sharp eyes scanning for movement. It hunted juvenile Telmatosaurus, primitive birds, and even members of its own kind. For on Hatzeg, meat was so scarce that no opportunity could be wasted. In the rivers and marshes, Allodaposuchus, an ancient crocodilian around 3 meters long, lay perfectly still in the murky water, waiting for prey to drink. One sudden strike, faster than a blink, could drag a young dinosaur beneath the surface. Nearby, Gargantuavis philoenos, a flightless bird weighing over 100 kilograms, pecked at fallen fruit and small carcasses, sometimes fleeing in panic when the shadow of Hatzegopteryx swept overhead. The entire island functioned like a closed biological machine, where energy cycled endlessly. A carcass would be torn apart by raptors, scraps would fall into rivers to be consumed by fish and microbes, and the loop began again. Nothing went to waste, and nothing lasted long. Yet behind this apparent abundance lay a brutal truth. Every species lived on the razor's edge between life and death. Hatzeg had no vast plains, no teeming herds, only small, fragile populations, limited by the boundaries of their world. A late rainy season, an oversized storm, or a single volcanic eruption could collapse the entire ecosystem. Some traces within the sediment layers show evidence of periodic flash floods and wildfires that once ravaged the island. Bands of charred coal interlaced with clay deposits testify that Hatzeg was always changing, never truly at peace. And under those very conditions, the creatures of this land developed an extraordinary capacity for endurance and adaptation, a trait that allowed them to survive for millions of years until the entire planet trembled. Because no matter how resilient they were, neither Hatzeg nor its strange denizens could escape the greatest catastrophe in Earth's history, the event that erased the Cretaceous in the blink of an eye. About 66 million years ago, what began as an ordinary day became the last day of the age of dinosaurs. On Hatzeg, the forests still whispered, the small Magyarosaurus still grazed by the swamps, and Hatzegopteryx still circled overhead in search of prey. None could have known that on the far side of the world, a colossal rock was tearing through the atmosphere, ready to write the final chapter of their story. That rock was the Chicxulub asteroid, over 10 kilometers wide, traveling at 20 kilometers per second. When it struck what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, the energy released equaled 10 billion Hiroshima bombs. In an instant, the Earth convulsed. Tsunamis hundreds of meters high raced across the oceans, wildfires erupted globally, and the atmosphere filled with dust, ash, and sulfur. In ancient Europe, the impact never touched Hatzeg directly, but its consequences spared no one. Just hours after the collision, the first tsunamis reached the Tethys Sea, smashing into the island's coasts and obliterating its beaches and lowlands. Sediments discovered in what is now Romania still contained a layer of iridium-rich dust, a rare element found mostly in meteorites. Clear evidence that Hatzeg lay within the disaster's impact zone. In the days that followed, Earth was plunged into darkness. Ash and dust blotted out the sun, causing temperatures to drop suddenly by dozens of degrees. Plants could no longer photosynthesize, forests withered, and food chains collapsed. The Telmatosaurus fell where they stood, starved to death. Balor Bondok wandered among the dried carcasses of its former prey. Above them, The vast wings of Hatzegopteryx faltered in the cold, smoky air. It had nothing left to hunt, and nowhere left to return to. Perhaps, in its final moments, the sky's once dominant predator still tried to spread its wings, searching for a glimmer of light through the dense clouds of ash. But there was no dawn anymore. When the dust and soot finally settled, when the sun vanished for years on end, the last creatures of Hatzeg faded into silence. The Cretaceous period came to an end, and with it, the entire reign of the dinosaurs. On the island of Hatzeg, life grew eerily still. The forests stood barren, the swamps cracked and dry, leaving only fossilized bones buried deep in the mud. Nature, with a single sweep of its hand, erased this entire inverted world, making way for a new age, the era of mammals. Yet within the silence of rock and soil, Hatzeg still keeps its secrets. For deep inside the sedimentary layers, the story of those strange creatures remains. The story of an island where evolution once broke its own rules. When the last veil of ash finally settled, the Earth entered a new epoch, the Paleogene, the age of mammals. But beneath the ground of modern-day Romania, within the stone strata of the Hatzeg Basin, lies the memory of a vanished world. A grand evolutionary experiment once conducted by nature itself. Since the late 19th century, Romanian paleontologists have excavated the Hatzeg Basin and uncovered extraordinary fossils, miniature dinosaurs, bones of giant flying reptiles, and traces of ancient crocodiles and birds. At first, many believed these remains belonged to juveniles. But after decades of analysis, using CT scans and electron microscopes, scientists reached a firm conclusion. These creatures were products of island evolution. Today, Hatzeg is known as the Natural Laboratory of Evolution, one of the most important sites on Earth for studying the effects of biological isolation. Here, every law of nature is amplified. When resources grow scarce, giants are forced to shrink. When space opens up, the small have a chance to become giants. When danger fades away, evolution no longer chooses the strongest. It favors those who adapt best. The lessons from Hatzeg allow us to understand more deeply that evolution has no fixed direction. It is not a race to become larger, smarter, or stronger, but an endless journey of change in order to survive. Nature does not care about titles like king or ruler. On Hatzeg, it was the former kings, the dinosaurs, who were dethroned while a creature of the skies claimed the ultimate throne. Perhaps that is the true message Hatzeg left behind. In the natural world, nothing is permanent. No species holds dominance forever, only adaptation, whether by becoming smaller or by taking to the skies, allows life to endure. Today, the Hatzeg Geopark in Romania has been recognized by UNESCO as a global geopark. The rock layers here are still being studied centimeter by centimeter, and each new fossil uncovered reveals another chapter of that inverted world. From the silence of fossils, Hatzeg continues to tell its story. The story of a place where evolution dared to break every boundary. On this planet, there once existed a place where dinosaurs were no longer the rulers, where the giants shrank to survive and the fragile rose to become kings, where the rule of the strong devour the weak was bent, and creation itself tested the final limits of life. That was Hatzeg, the forgotten island amid the Tethys Sea, where evolution rewrote its own laws. Today, the sea has receded, The forests have changed color, and those monsters remain only as fossils buried deep in stone. Yet the story of Hatzeg still echoes, not as a warning, but as proof that life can take on countless forms. Whether dinosaur, bird, or human, we are all born from the same law: to adapt, to change, and to endure. Hatzeg is gone, but its lesson remains, etched into every grain of rock and every fragment of bone. A reminder that nature obeys no creature's will. It follows only its own.